What is up, guys? It's your boy Recluse, and today we have the ultimate guide for episode 1 Echoes, which has just gone live within Destiny 2, going over everything you need to know about how this new season, or I should say episode, works. Upgrading failsafe, the new seasonal activities, yes plural, there's actually a secret activity you can unlock, and how to earn a crap ton of new loot, and so let's get started. Now, first things first, you do want to complete the seasonal questline. The first thing it's going to do is actually throw you into the mission Meteoric. If you change characters or back out, it should be accessible from the directory. And Meteoric is going to take you to where this strange object landed in Nessus, and it's going to give you a taste of the seasonal activity. But after you're done with that mission, you're going to go to the helm, and we see our first look at what this season's vendor failsafe is going to look like. So as you can see right here, you can go and look at the potential upgrades, but they're all kind of locked. And importantly, these upgrades are going to unlock as you complete certain quests. And we can unlock actually a ton of them already this week, but there's no choice involved. Like sometimes you can pick one upgrade or another. This season, it's just going to be doing the quests and then getting the upgrades you actually get for completing that quest. So you don't have to put too much thought into these research bays. But after that, it's going to ask you to actually do the new seasonal activity, which is called Arena Breach Executable. And there's actually a lot more going on with this activity than there initially appears to be. So, the main goal of this activity is to collect extracted data, fill up the bar in the left corner of your screen, and then deposit them. Now, importantly, you can only deposit when you're full. So that means if you can communicate with your teammates and say, hey, I'm almost there, can you let me pick these up? It is going to be more efficient. But also, every single time you deposit a full data collection, you actually get a bonus for your team. So you're gonna see right here, like I slam, and then in the bottom left corner of everyone's screen, it will say that I researched something. So there's a bunch of different upgrades you can get. The Scorching Solar Fireteam upgrade, for example, will actually cause basically all your weapons to have incandescent. Like when you kill an enemy, it will scorch nearby enemies. There's a Stasis one that will spawn a bunch of Stasis crystals. There's stuff that regenerate your class ability more. So as you continually slam on this collection site, you're going to make your fire team stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, this will seemingly reset when you go to a different area, but that is going to come up later when we talk about the boss fight. Now, as it comes to collecting these data breaches, well, you actually have a bunch of different random objectives that you could potentially get. So, for example, you have these areas you have to stand on, but they're actually Vex Milk geysers. So when you hear and see them bubbling up, you want to get off because otherwise you're going to be thrown into the air and significantly damaged. But if you do capture them, they're going to spew out a bunch of extracted data. There's another objective you may get where you have to kill these minotaurs and you can pick up the craniums. At this point, you can shoot these circular objects in the air, and that's going to unlock like more connections in the air. Every time you shoot these objects, extracted data will spawn out of them, so you're shooting a bunch of different stuff, making a big connection. That's eventually going to lead down to like these shields where enemies spawn in them. You have to kill the enemies to unlock more pathways that you shoot with the cranium. It's kind of hectic, to be honest. Another potential activity you can get is you have these different like purple objects hanging around the sky. Well, you have to go and kill these Cyclopses, as you can see, and stand within like the circle they create when they die, and that's going to allow you to damage these like pinkish purple objects, and every time you shoot one, it will spawn a bunch of extracted data. And then, of course, killing enemies, and especially more powerful enemies, will also spawn extracted data. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Eventually, again, you're going to complete a certain zone, and then you're going to be told to go to a different zone and continue the breach executable. However, To properly explain what's going to happen in this part, what we're going to do is skip forward a little bit here, because after you complete your first breach executable within the Echoes quest, it's going to send you back to failsafe, and then you're going to be given just a ton of different quests. You're given like a sampler, you're given a random organic specimen. What the heck does that even do? But most importantly, you're going to have the quest A Rising Chorus Act 1, and then you have first, second, and third sample taken. So you absolutely want to do this before you start farming breach executables, because this is going to send you down into Nessus. Like, as you can see right here, when you open the destination map, you can see the actual sample locations spawn in Nessus. Then you're going to head down there and simply head to those locations. As you can see, these samples are going to be interactable objects on the ground. Like, they're going to look like weird, I don't know, starfishes. You're going to extract one sample, you're going to continue forward, extract another one, you extract another one, and then you're kind of ambushed by the Vex, and you have to get out of there. But once you extract all those samples, that quest is going to update, you head back to the helm, interact with failsafe, and then you're going to get an actual proper specimen ID quest. So at this point, as you can see, you actually get like a seasonal upgrade for failsafe, like the full seasonal pop-up appears, and super importantly, you're going to interact with this radiolite bay and deposit your samples, and then you're given the planetary piston hammer. This is super important. It's also very complicated. Like, there's really not good instructions of what to do with this, but this is why I'm skipping ahead. Your planetary piston hammer will come massively useful in the breach executable seasonal activity, because let's go back to breach executable. We talked about some of the different objectives you can face, and your main goal is what I've already explained. Like, if you do exactly what I said, you go and you collect the extracted data, you deposit them, you go from one area to the other, eventually you're gonna have a boss fight. And then when you kill the boss, you're technically done. Like, you're gonna get a reward, and a lot of people are gonna think they just did that activity properly, but you're actually missing out on significantly more loot, because what happens is, when you complete that first area and you're asked to move to another area, as you can see, samples actually spawn. So you want to move around the map and collect these samples. Not only that, when you're looking around the map, you're going to see a bunch again of those triangular symbols for samples, but you're also going to see this like high value target symbol, and that is going to be an object that is always going to look like what you're seeing right here, and you can actually interact with it and use your piston hammer. What happens is that, as you can see, when you use your piston hammer, a bunch of samples spawn all around the immediate location. So you and your teammates need to run around and collect these samples before eventually these samples are closed up on, and then you can no longer interact with them. So what's the point of doing this? Well, you're going to get more rewards based on how many samples you actually collected. So you're going to do that first objective, then when you're supposed to travel to the next area, you can collect samples and someone can use a hammer charge. Then you do the second objective, and before you go to the boss fight, there's another opportunity to collect samples and use another hammer charge. Now, the hammer charges are going to be given out for completing activities, right? I got one from doing one of the breach executables. I got one from beating one of the raid encounters, right? Like, they just kind of drop everywhere. But you want to make sure that if you do have them, you are absolutely going and activating them and collecting these samples. Because let's talk about the boss fight and what happens after. So in the boss fight, you are going to be facing off with one of actually several different bosses, and likely more are going to be added as this episode continues. So right here we have the Tormentor guy. We simply have to take him down. Eventually he's going to disappear. Then we got to take down these shielded scions by going inside their shields, and then he's going to reappear. Now, while you're doing this and the other boss fight, which is a massive Hydra, there's going to be a ton of the extracted data spawning. So why do you care about this? Well, remember, actually planting that extracted data will give your fire team upgrades. So you technically like don't have to collect a bunch of this extracted data in the boss fight. You could just focus down the boss. But if you do and you're planting it, again, you're causing Scorch, you're causing those stasis crystals to spawn, and you're potentially making the boss fight significantly easier, guys. So once that boss fight is eventually done, you're going to teleport back next to Failsafe. And here you're going to find the normal reward chest. But then off to the right, as you can see right here, there's an object that you can interact with to deposit your samples. And then, as you can see right here, you're going to get more rewards, like juicy seasonal rewards. I was getting red borders and stuff from this. And also, it's going to give you an actual numerical value of how many samples you need to deposit again. So you can see right here, you need 200 grams of these samples. And you'll notice that when you're collecting the normal samples, it's just normally like the white samples. But if you use your hammer charge, you're going to get blue and sometimes even purple samples that have a lot more weight. So they will fill up this deposit station a lot faster. And one run, I even almost got all the way up to like 400. Like I deposited and I had 175 out of 200. So technically I think you could even, if you get every single sample, like deposit on this like twice to get even more rewards. So I wouldn't necessarily comb the entire map and spend like way extra time finding every single sample, but 100% collect nearby samples as you're traveling to the next zone, and absolutely do the hammer charge. And only one person on your team needs to use their hammer charge, so you can have one person use theirs the first time, spew out the samples, and then the next time you find a hammer charge location, another teammate uses theirs, just to make it a lot more efficient. And importantly, while you're doing all of this, you're also going to get the Specimen ID quest done, because the objectives are just to extract data from breach executables and use your planetary hammer. And so once you get that done, importantly, like you'll actually see the second I smack my hammer, it's actually gonna just pop up and I get a bunch of seasonal upgrades and stuff like that. At that point, I interact with Failsafe and I've officially completed this Specimen ID quest. And again, that's just going to automatically unlock a bunch of different upgrades. Now, you may be wondering, like, what the heck are these research bays and stuff like that? What are these organic samples? Well, these are kind of like if you played Season of the Deep, collecting the fish. You can go over here and interact with these like glass tanks and deposit these samples, and that's going to potentially progress your quest, but it doesn't actually seem to do anything. And these organic samples, you just collect them, and then as you can see, you put them in the terrarium, and that's kind of about it. Like, they're just kind of visual nice things you can do for Failsafe to progress your collection, but it's not actually going to give you any meaningful progression within your vendor or anything like that. But it still may progress you in terms of triumphs or the seasonal challenges, which are going to give you XP and stuff like that, so it's probably still worth doing. Now, as for the other seasonal activity, again, this is completely unrelated to the main quest line. A lot of people don't know about this, but there is going to be an additional quest called Encoded Log. And if you travel down to Nessus, specifically in the Cistern, as you can see right here, there's actually a weird, like, purplish object near where you first spawn. And if you stand inside the zone, you can see underneath your minimap, you get a bunch of gibberish, like just random codes. But if you go a little bit further, you can actually interact with this object to obtain a decoder protocol. Then, if you actually head back and stand within that zone, now it gives you clues. Like, now I see where the canopy touches sky. And if you continue into the tangle, you're going to find another one. And when you decipher that, it wants you to go into the Well of Echoes. So as you can see right here, when you do, you're actually going to have a bunch of enemies to fight, and when you kill them, then it wants you to travel down here. Well, once you do, it's actually going to load you into a different area, and it's going to have an actual mission you can start. Now, this is actually a high difficulty activity. The activity power cap is 2005, so significantly higher than the other seasonal activity, but it's called the Enigma protocol activity. And what it is you're going to go into the Vex network and you're going to have a limited amount of time. However, shooting these yellow objects is going to give you 30 more seconds. So your goal is to run through this activity as fast as possible without the time running out. So you're also going to have to be looking for these yellow object spawns in order to extend your time enough to actually complete this activity. And it is kind of on the tougher end. You are sometimes going to find certain upgrades, like you're going to see a grenade icon and then like a glowing circle around it. You can go and collect that. It will give you grenade energy, and the same goes for you have melee energy and super energy and stuff, so make sure to be getting the most of these upgrades. There's a certain objective here where you're charging this ball by standing in these zones to eventually deposit it. And while you're doing this objective, you want to pay attention to the boss yellow bar harpies. They're actually called timekeepers. As you can see, killing them will give you 30 more seconds, and they're going to appear throughout this activity. So again, you're just running through as fast as possible while looking for those extra time spawns. But after this traversal section, the next objective we encountered was having to pick up these orbs and throw them at the immune shielded harpies. Once all of them were dead, we were able to continue into another traversal section. And eventually you're going to get all the way to a sparrow racing part. You're going to get through that. And then guys, once we got done with the sparrow segment, something very interesting happened. We got into this room and as you can see, it said reboot paused and we got a bunch of rewards from this chest, right? Then we were actually able to continue optionally. So I believe you can just keep doing a mix of either traversal segments and then objectives, and eventually you get here and you can either stop and you're good with your rewards, or you can keep going deeper and deeper. So that's exactly what we ended up doing. So we have yet another traversal segment into this area where it's the experimental grid. We had to kill a bunch of enemies and then shoot the purple objects that are going to drop the data we need to collect. Once we collected enough, we go back to another traversal segment. We get through that traversal segment, and that actually leads to a big bad boss fight. As you can see right here, we're killing the boss. We're looking for those time code harpies. We're looking for those yellow spawns. And then once we kill the boss, it's kind of the same pattern. We get teleported to another sparrow segment. And then when the sparrow segment is done, we go back in that same room with even more rewards. And I believe from what I've heard and experienced, as you get further and further and further, the reprised weapons you get have multiple perk slots the further you get. So we could have continued from here even further, but we decided to call it quits. So think of this as the Vex network version of the coil from last season, where you can just keep going and going and going, and your rewards should be more numerous and better as you keep going. So this is just going to be like another activity that's going to award you with like powerful and pinnacle gear every single week, and just another way to farm the new seasonal weapons, guys. It's significantly harder than Breach Executable, so keep that in mind, but there you have it, guys. That is going to be it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.